including significant winds and heavy rain. And there has also been frequent and widespread tornado warnings throughout the day, and they're continuing and expected to expand as Milton moves over land, including a few that have already touched down in South Florida. Currently, Milton is a Category 3 with wind speeds up to 120 miles per hour. But no one should be confused. It's still expected to be one of the most and worst destructive hurricanes to hit Florida in over a century. Milton still carries incredible destructiveness, can wipe out communities, can cause loss of life. Storm surge is still expected to be up to 13 feet. So I urge everyone in Hurricane Milton's path to listen to local officials and follow all the safety instructions they give. At this point, evacuation is probably difficult. So I encourage people to look for safer shelter. Sometimes moving just a few miles can mean the difference between life and death. Over the last few weeks, there's been reckless and irresponsible and relentless promotion of disinformation and outright lies about what's going on. It's undermining confidence in the people in Florida and incredible rescue and recovery work that has been undertaken. Literally, there are thousands of fellow Americans who are putting their lives at stake and putting on the line to do the dangerous work that needs to be done now. And it's harmful to those who most need the help. Quite frankly, these lies are un-American.
Urgent message for the people of Florida. Hurricane Milton is going to be a deadly and catastrophic storm. It will bring massive storm surge, high winds, and severe flooding as it moves across the state of Florida. You need to prepare for catastrophic impacts. This is going to be a serious storm, one that could forever change communities that are still recovering from Helene. The biggest thing that I want to say is, remember, if you still have time to evacuate, all you have to do is go perhaps a few miles inland. You just need to get out of that storm surge evacuation area. What we see from these storms is that the majority of the fatalities come from the storm surge, come from the water.
First, we're going to focus on the life-threatening storm surge that is about to play out along the Florida West Coast. Particularly concerned about this area from Anclote River through Tampa Bay, down through Sarasota to Port Charlotte to Fort Myers. Everywhere you see in the orange here has the potential for at least 5 to 6 feet of inundation above ground level, 8 to 12 feet in the Fort Myers, Charlotte Harbor area, 9 to 13 feet along portions of the coast of Manatee and Sarasota and Charlotte counties from Anna Maria Island to Boca Grande. The potential for 6 to 9 feet of inundation farther north up into the Tampa Bay region. This is life-threatening inundation. That water is going to violently be pushed onto dry land by the winds associated with Milton as it makes landfall this evening, especially near and just to the right of where the center crosses the coast. So hopefully everybody in those storm surge evacuation zones is now out of harm's way. Water is now starting to rise. Winds are picking up. Rainfall is occurring, and your evacuation routes may be cut off. So please get to a safe place if you have not done so already. I do want to mention that also along the east coast of the Florida Peninsula and southeastern Georgia from Sebastian Inlet northward, the potential for 3 to 5 feet of inundation as strong winds on the backside of Milton push water from the Atlantic onto the land here on the east coast of Florida. So dangerous surge expected there, especially as we get into the overnight and early morning hours on Thursday. Let's now talk about the wind. Again, we've seen this wind field of Milton grow as expected as the peak winds have come down a little bit. You can see the extent of the tropical storm force winds is quite large. We've seen the hurricane force wind field expand. The eye is growing in size here in the final hours before landfall. And we are expecting landfall as a major hurricane along the west coast of Florida in the next few hours. And the Milton expected to remain a hurricane as it moves across the Florida Peninsula and then emerges out into the Atlantic tomorrow. Again, hurricane warnings in effect for much of the state of Florida, from Bonita Beach northward to Suwannee River on the west coast, including Tampa Bay, Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, and from the Martin-St. Lucie County line northward to Ponte Vedra Beach on the east coast and everywhere in between, including places like Orlando, Melbourne, Ocala, St. Augustine. Much of the central portion of the peninsula, the I-4 corridor, is at risk from devastating hurricane force winds, especially in gusts over the inland areas that can cause structural damage, tree damage, widespread power outages, and very dangerous environment and very dangerous situation is going to play out from west to east across the Florida Peninsula as we go from tonight into Thursday. So please be sheltered in a safe place out of flood-prone areas, and be sheltered in place away from windows and doors, away from any trees that could fall on you. Most fatalities due to wind occur due to trees falling on people, cars, or people in homes. Let's move on now to the rainfall threat, which is also substantial and also unfortunately focused in the same I-4 corridor from Tampa to Orlando to Daytona Beach. Expecting widespread rainfall totals of 6 to 12 inches, isolated totals as high as 18 inches in these areas. Some places have already seen 6+ inches of rain already, and we haven't even seen Milton Center make landfall. But near and to the left of the track of the center is where we're going to see that heaviest rainfall play out. And this area highlighted in pink is where we have the highest risk of that life-threatening and potentially catastrophic flash and urban flooding playing out tonight and Thursday. That includes Orlando, Daytona Beach, Tampa, St. Petersburg area, down to Sarasota, down to near Melbourne, with also risk extending north and south of that, maybe in a more isolated fashion. Next, let's talk about the tornado threat, which has been substantial and played out with many tornado warnings, many confirmed tornadoes occurring across central and southern portions of the Florida Peninsula this afternoon. Again, this risk extends through the overnight hours, especially in places along the southeast coast of Florida from Miami northward to Melbourne, but also includes Orlando and Tampa and all the way down to the Florida Keys. There's a tornado watch in effect for this area through 9 p.m. tonight, will likely be extended into the overnight hours. One important thing to remember is you can have multiple tornadoes or potential tornadoes impact you in the same area as these thunderstorms that we can see here on the radar imagery move over the same area on the east side of the circulation of Milton. Just because you've had one tornado warning and it goes past you doesn't mean you can't be affected by another potential tornado later on. We're expecting a large area of destructive storm surge with inundation of 10 feet or greater above ground level along portions of the west central coast of the Florida Peninsula. We're accompanied with damaging waves, and water levels are going to rise rapidly in the next few hours as the eye of Milton approaches the coast. And strong onshore winds on the backside of the hurricane will also cause a rapid rise in water after the center makes landfall as well. We're going to see devastating hurricane force winds along portions of the west coast of Florida and across the peninsula to the east coast, especially in gusts as we go through the overnight hours and into Thursday. Devastating hurricane force winds, particularly where the eye of Milton comes on shore along the west central Florida coast. And again, the risk of strong tornadoes will continue through the evening hours across the southern and central portions of the Florida Peninsula. If a tornado warning is issued for your area, take shelter in an interior room on the lowest floor of your home. And then finally, the heavy rainfall and flooding threat will continue to play out through tonight and into Thursday in portions of Florida, especially that central Florida Peninsula I-4 corridor with the potential for life-threatening and catastrophic flooding.